But basically, we're going to be talking about esports. We're going to go over a light history and just some of the analytics in the industry. So a little bit about me. My name is Payson Chadrow. I've got my LinkedIn and GitHub here for you. I am a recent graduate of the Flatiron Immersive Data Science program alongside Blake, where we've kind of worked together on some various projects together. In terms of sports teams, I am a Buckeye, so I do enjoy some Ohio State football. Also, huge marching band nerd, and I mean Ohio State, best damn band in the land. You can't really argue with that. Since we're talking about esports, I'll go ahead and list my favorite esport, being Rocket League, which for those who are not aware, it's basically soccer with jet-powered cars. It's just a really simple concept, easy to kind of pick up and watch and enjoy. So jumping into this, what we're going to kind of talk about, we're going to kind of discuss the humble beginnings of esports, where it kind of started from. We'll discuss the rapid growth. We'll talk about kind of the current state of the game, what it's kind of looking like currently, and then we'll kind of speculate on some of the prospective future that the industry has. So before I go to this next slide, with what you guys know about esports currently, how old do you think esports is? How long do you think it's been around? Kate saying 5 years.
5 years. Yep, that's my guess.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I'm gonna go back to like arcade days, right? And say
Arcade
kind of
days.
like Tetris. What's that? 30, 40 years ago now? Or
Okay.
early 90s or late 90s, early 90s?
Late to early 90s. Okay. Um, okay. Okay, interesting. It's this is kind of a surprising. It was kind of a surprising history here for me. While not the origination of esports, 1958 did see the very first multiplayer game, which kind of kicked it all off. This was actually developed by American physicist William Higginbotham, if anyone is familiar with that name. He actually served as the head of the electronics division on the Manhattan Project. Later working for a military research facility, Brookhaven. And basically once a year, they would put on this public exhibition. And in 1958, he decided he wanted to have something that kind of had some action to it, something that was able to be interactive. And realizing that the computers that they had there were able to calculate ballistic missile trajectories, or essentially bouncing balls with wind resistance, he kind of formed this idea for a two-player interactive game. Which the link here, I can put that in the chat too, actually shows some gameplay on an oscilloscope of what this actually looked like, which was super interesting.
Quick question about this, because like I know that like some of the esports leagues and things like that are more recent. Like, what is it that categorizes this as a sport rather than just as kind of a video game?
Which yeah, we're actually going to kind of touch on that with a little bit of competitiveness to it. Basically, when competing to earn something essentially out of it, and then it kind of slowly bridges the gap.
Okay.
So the first recorded gaming tournament or early esport in the days actually took place several years later. In 1972 is the first known recorded event of any type of gaming tournament. Basically, 10 years prior, students at MIT in their artificial intelligence division basically created this game which pitted player ships against each other with limited fuel and ammo with realistic gravitational fields. So in 1972, Stanford University kind of organized the Intergalactic Space War Olympics, which hosted a record-setting 24 players, all competing for the coveted grand prize of a year subscription to Rolling Stone magazine. Which actually, this is the Rolling Stone magazine that was issued the month prior with the headline there of the Intergalactic Space War Olympics. So here it's still very much in its infancy, still very much a niche thing, with basically only college students or colleges having access to the technology that could even play a game. So this is where we kind of jump into the formation of the competitive side of gaming with the development of the high score, which is also kind of the first analytics in gaming. So in 1976, Midway released Seawolf, which was the first ever high score on a video game arcade cabinet. However, this was kind of more of a a proof of concept as opposed to anything really kind of applicable, because basically anyone could come up, press a button, and reset that high score. So essentially, you were only really competing against yourself. Um, 2 years later, 1978, we saw the release of Space Invaders, which I'm sure everyone here has heard of Space Invaders. Basically, Space Invaders kind of took the high score and applied that to the machine's RAM. So now the high score was consistent on that machine and would only be reset if the machine lost power. So this is what started to drive people or compulsively returning to these arcades, trying to get their own claim to fame, putting their high score on these machines. A year later, we see the game Starfire, which takes and basically perfects the high score system that we see today in almost every arcade, in basically any arcade game that exists now, where along with that high score, you're now finally able to leave your own initials next to it, staking your own personal claim to that high score and your proof of that it being your high score. So next up, we see, as I mentioned, Space Invaders. Uh, Space Invaders was for gaming what essentially the Beatles was to music at the time. Beatles mania was a thing. Space Invaders mania was also a thing. Anyone and everyone around this time was hearing about Space Invaders, talking about Space Invaders. This game garnered worldwide attention. And it was an extremely addictive and just compulsively fun game to play. So based off this fame, this notoriety of Space Invaders, Atari actually holds the first Space Invaders championship in 1980, which this is considered to be the first true kind of esport gathering tournament with more than 10,000 participants coming together from all over the United States. Oh, we got someone popping in the chat there. Let me pull that up. Ah, all right, there you go. All right, so next up in 1981, we see Walter Day, who's become a prominent name in the early days of gaming, as well as the competitive side of gaming, and kind of uh, created the foundation that esports were essentially built on. So in 1981, Walter Day visits hundreds of arcades all across the nation, eventually returning to his hometown in Iowa, creating his own arcade called Twin Galaxies. The following year, he released all of the high score data that he had collected from all of those various arcades all over the country in what was called the Twin Galaxies National Scoreboard, which essentially became the de facto official scorekeeper for video game high scores, with video game magazines quickly following suit, publishing their readers' reported high scores. So this quickly became a competitive thing where everyone was constantly competing and clamoring to gain the right of claiming high score. Gaming magazines such as Nintendo Power, Sega Visions started following suit. And in 1983, Walter Day actually established the very first professional U.S. national video game team, which he actually acquired members and would take them on a bus tour all across the country, challenging arcade players all over. He even made attempts to challenge foreign countries by visiting foreign embassies and essentially challenging them to provide their own players to compete against. This huge rise, basically this huge interest in terms of Space Invaders, gaming has kind of made a mark. Everyone was kind of talking about at this point in the early 80s. So following this success, in 1982, we saw the very first competitive gaming TV show in Starcade, which ran from 1982 to 1984, airing a total of 133 episodes, strictly on gaming competitions. It was also featured in the show That's Incredible, which I linked a video to in the Slack earlier. It also became a plot in the hit motion picture Tron. So gaming was slowly kind of working its way into the mainstream. The esport was a budding sport at this point, where the competitive nature, people were traveling all over the country, all over the world in some cases, to compete against each other to grab their own kind of claim to fame at being the best at a game. Follow this up within 1991. We fast forward here to where Capcom's release of Street Fighter II. This was a huge breakthrough in arcades because players were finally able to face off directly against each other in a tournament-style competition. The popularity of these fighting games and tournament-style matchups throughout the 90s eventually gave way to the foundation of the Evolution Championship Series, or EVO, in 1996, which to this day is still the go-to and most renowned fighting game tournament in the world, hosted in Las Vegas every year. Fast forward a little bit again. And we see the rapid growth starting with the internet and PC gaming in 1995 with the release of Warcraft 2. 1996, we see Quake, which the popularity of Quake being the first first-person shooter, allowing friends to basically shoot each other over the internet. The popularity of this quickly blew up, and they established QuakeCon shortly after its release, which initially started with a handful of people in a hotel convention room, about 10 to 20 people, and via word of mouth, over the next few days, ended up with over 200 people, all playing Quake in a convention room at a hotel. 1997 saw the creation of the PC gaming leagues, the first professional PC gaming league. 1997 also saw the Red Annihilation, which was one of the oldest, or basically one of the most renowned older gaming tournaments, with close to 2,000 participants competing all over the US via an online connection. The top 16 players being actually flown to a central location to compete in person, with the grand prize being the game developer's own personal Ferrari 328. So these legs quickly began raising millions in sponsorship money for tournaments that began regularly seeing thousands of participants year after year. Fast forward again to 2011, where we see the release of Twitch, the streaming service. So prior to Twitch, gaming studios and developers tournaments, they did attempt live streaming, but it was a hassle and it was expensive. Basically, all but the most avid fans of the game were willing to put up with the frequent lag and poor video quality that plagued live streaming then. So Twitch introduced a seamless, virtually lag-free, low-maintenance video stream, which quickly garnered the attention of numerous gamers and casual fans alike. So Twitch took esports viewership from the thousands to millions for games such as League of Legends and Dota, both of which quickly established world championships based off of the added attention these games got. Twitch basically lowered the barrier of entry for gamers and streamers alike, becoming the central de facto place to go for streams, for anyone to stream any game, and basically also where new esports seem to rise, with any game with a competitive nature basically is able to be streamed and a tournament hosted via Twitch. All right, and the current state of the game. Oh, this didn't fix there. So current state of the game, where we're sitting at currently in terms of revenue, 2018, combined global revenue generated from the esports industry was $780 million. So far today, this year, as of July, has reached $1.06 billion and is currently projected by 2023 to reach $1.6 billion. Investments in esports is exponentially insane at this point. 2018 actually had an 800% increase in the year-over-year investments, going from, I think, 64 million to $50 billion in terms of investment money coming from sponsors. It's quite frankly the amount of money being pumped into this thing and how quickly it's blowing up. So next, we're going to kind of look at the top 10 esports as of today. So does anyone have any guesses as to what number 10 or where we're going to start out here on this list, so to speak?
I don't know. Maybe Counter-Strike's still up there.
Counter-Strike. Yeah. Any other guesses? Is that all you got?
I mean, probably Dota and League of Legends. I see those a lot, right? Mm-hmm. So is this like esports? Yeah, like tournaments.
Yeah, these are the biggest esports basically currently. Okay. So yeah, NBA 2K comes up at number 10. This is in terms of average viewership. Where'd my notes go there? So yeah, NBA 2K League underwent its first year in 2018, actually partnering with the NBA. So 21 NBA teams currently have an actual NBA 2K team. And they actually draft players for these teams much the same way they do as their own league, with collaboration and support from the NBA. 2K League has a 15-week regular season with 3 regular season tournaments, as well as significant prize pools. Basically, the top 7 teams make the postseason, as well as a winner of the last regular season tournament.
I have a friend who plays for the Pacers on their esports team. And
Really?
he's really good. And he tweets, he's big on Twitter, and he tweets about it a lot. And it's interesting to follow him because, man, I mean, these players are just as competitive as real NBA players are about it. You know, I'll have
the
to
amount
send you
of
some
training that goes into like
Yeah,
professional
exactly.
esports is insane.
Yeah. So he plays for the Pacers on their team. So I thought that was cool.
Yes, and then next up, coming at 9th, we see Rocket League. Oh, this isn't wanting to work well with my. All right, I'm just going to unview them all and talk about them because I'm trying to have my notes on one screen and then click on the slide in the other one. Here we go. Oh, I guess it does work here. So the Rocket League Championship Series was created in 2016, initially having a prize pool of $55,000. You can see how that's quickly grown to over $350,000. The Rainbow Six Pro League was also established in 2016, which quickly has grown around the world. Which now features 7 different global regions, each having their own league, which make up part of the larger Pro League. With its most recent tournament, the Six National, which boasts a $3 million prize pool. Next up, we have Overwatch, also released in 2016. This game didn't take long to become a favorite esport with the creation of the Overwatch League in 2018. The Overwatch League was actually the first esport league to adopt the model of traditional sports teams that became city-based and represent a specific region. It's currently comprised of 20 teams, which are divided up into 2 conferences. The teams are actually named after the area they come from and actually include their own mascots as well. Follow that up with Call of Duty. Call of Duty has basically been around in some form since 2010, with the very first World Championship in 2013. In 2019, they actually started following the very similar model to Overwatch, with franchising their teams and adapting a similar model. This did cause them to kind of take a significant hit to their viewership because they became official partners with YouTube, meaning that their streams for their tournaments and things were no longer broadcast on Twitch, which used to be the go-to place for all streaming. Next up, we have Hearthstone, which this was released in 2014 as a free-to-play card game. This quickly became one of the most popular games in the world, reaching over 100 million players in 2018. This game is consistently pulling in anywhere between 50 to 150,000 viewers every single tournament. Next up, we have Dota 2, which was released in 2013 by Valve. Dota is one of the strongest and well-supported esports followings of any game currently out. Valve created the Dota Pro Circuit, where any team can compete to gain points to qualify for the International, which is the premier Dota tournament. The prize pool for the International has steadily increased every year since it began, reaching an all-time high of $34 million last year. Again, that's for one tournament, which is the largest prize pool in esports history. Dota does have significantly fewer tournaments than most other esports, but that also kind of makes the International one of the most highly anticipated esports tournaments every year. It gets insane viewership as well. Next up, I don't know, I personally don't really agree with this one, but that's personal bias. This is currently one of the youngest esports. Competitive Fortnite began in mid-2018. So Fortnite leads in terms of player count and prize pools, with the Fortnite World Cup in 2019 breaking records with 40 million people competing in this tournament. They also awarded, in terms of total prize pool money amongst all of their tournaments that they hosted, they awarded just shy of $65 million among all of their tournaments last year alone. Next up, we do see another title from Valve with Counter-Strike Go. Counter-Strike Go came out in 2012 as the sequel to its original 2000 release. Counter-Strike is currently the oldest esport and also the second most played game on PC. Which brings us to the number one most popular esport as League of Legends. So since its release in 2009, League of Legends has maintained the title of most popular game in the world, with no signs of that changing anytime soon. Boasting well over 100 million active players this year, it's the most played game on PC and has set the record for number of viewers for any esporting event last year at nearly 4 million unique viewers for their tournament. So this kind of gives the question with what the state of the analytics in esports. With basically as diverse as esports can be, with virtually any game becoming a potential professional esport, analytics is still very much kind of a wild, wild west scenario here, with basically the top esports having the best chance of viable analytics for them. So currently we see analytics in the form of team partnerships. Microsoft has actually partnered with the most profitable esports gaming team, Cloud9, which providing analytics using Azure and Power BI to improve team strategy and training, which seems to have worked, considering after 6 years of near wins, they finally this year, earlier in the spring, the 2020 League of Legends Championship sharing spring split, they finally brought in their first win, first victory in that tournament after being partnered with Microsoft in their Azure platform. So their platform is actually really interesting because it's capable, they've created their own system that's capable of tracking player movement of all 10 unique players during a match, as well as using information from the game's own API and using computer vision analysis of recorded matches. So they pair this system with historical data of opponents, their prior character selections to create probable simulations, allowing them to prepare their real-time decision-making skills based upon possible encounters in a match. And then I couldn't find much information into the terms of this partnership, but business logistics software company SAP has partnered with Team Liquid in terms of sponsoring and providing analytics for their team as well. So it's very, very interesting with team-based partnerships in terms of sponsorship and analytics. But also we see some game-specific analytics out there. So the first of which is Shadow, which originated as a dedicated Counter-Strike analytics solution. Shadow has actually grown since it's released to provide specific game analytics for essentially the three of the most popular esports, being Counter-Strike, League of Legends, and Dota 2. And it's become kind of a refined analytics tool which caters specifically towards professional players, teams, and coaches. Then we see things like Fort Buff and Dota Buff, which is essentially kind of community analytics tools. They're community accessible repositories of data and analytics for their respective games, allowing you to pull stats directly from their leaderboards, as well as providing some additional insights. What was really interesting, which I haven't seen anything on its current use today, was Echo. Which Echo is an analytics tool which was developed by Digital Creativity Labs in the UK in 2017, specifically for Dota 2. What makes this really interesting is that it used both live and historic data to convert important in-game events and data points into ever-changing graphics that could be easily consumed and enjoyed by the audience and moderators alike. So this was basically a consistently changing readout of the statistics of the game as it was played. And in terms of where we are, so that's where we are today in terms of esports, just a general overview. There's so many esports out there, and looking the analytics of each game varies so much. With MOBAs, the massive online battle arenas like Dota and League of Legends seem to be the most significant in terms of analytics. But it's still, like I said, very much a Wild West situation with kind of games popping up and going as the years go by.
So are these? I'm sorry to
No, go ahead.
interrupt. Is the Dota buff and Fort buff, are those like APIs and stuff, or is this like all websites you just go to, or is it software you install locally on your machine that tracks your stats?
Dota buff and Fort buff are websites. I think they do have some API access, which basically it pulls in-game statistics and hosts them. So you can look up any player yourself. You can look up other players to kind of compare your stats respectively. It's very much a community-driven, community-accessive analytics tool.
Okay, cool.
But in terms of prospective future for the industry as a whole, basically the popularity and profitability from esports has grown exponentially, essentially since the internet. So as technology improves, so does the esports industry. With things like VR and AR still in their infancy, we're starting to kind of see the lines blurred between esport and actual sport, where we have that gamer mindset and the physical athleticism kind of coming together. Just as early as 2016, we already started to see the very first VR esports league, and there are already professional VR tournaments, albeit they don't gather a whole lot of viewership. It's still kind of a very niche category, but I think it does kind of pose a very interesting future for sports analytics and esports analytics alike. All right, just kind of rushed through some of that, but does anyone else have any questions or?
I want a great presentation, Payson. I think this was very enlightening and brought back a lot of our childhoods. I'm sure I was smiling even checking out your presentation earlier. I wanted to pull up the thread that Blake had. I'm not sure if you had any more insights on it, like even with the Dota buff, stuff like that. Like what, could you talk maybe more specifically about like what sort of metrics and stats are being, like I assume kills and kill percentages, stuff like that, but what other kind of cool metrics and analytics do you see that are being tracked in these things?
This is where it gets kind of interesting because it essentially varies from game to game. So like esports as a whole
Yeah.
doesn't have a whole lot of general analytics aside from like win percentage and things of that nature. Which again, as players kind of cycle in, anybody can essentially be like the consistency of players is kind of hard to track. And again, the structuring of esports is, it's only very recently kind of started to establish the franchise leagues and the team kind of structure where there's more stability in terms of how esports are kind of held and processed. Outside of like the big name esports, it's still very much anyone can be a sudden contender type thing. So like individual player stats, it can be very difficult to kind of track and kind of predict potential matchups and things when you never really know who you're competing against. But with the big esports though, for instance, the Microsoft Azure partnering with Cloud9, that was for League of Legends, which they actually have their very own data scientist on staff, which provides all of their analytics. And with games like League of Legends, there was actually a paper written on encounter analysis. So basically anytime opposing characters kind of come into contact with each other on the map, that's when they kind of start tracking analytics. They start tracking where they move, how they move, the abilities that they have versus the abilities the other character has. And that's when they kind of like take all of this and they develop character selection plays basically, because that's one thing that's very interesting in esports like Dota 2 and League of Legends, where the game starts off, each player, each team is still choosing the players or choosing the abilities that they'll use through that match. So that's where the analytics kind of come into play. If this team chooses this player, what's a good counter to that? Where the analytics kind of come into play, because it's constantly changing too. They constantly update and patch their games that change all of those metrics, all of those values. So it's a very complex,
ever-changing.
Ever-changing field of statistics there.
I got one comment and two questions here. Your boy Walter Day, I just want to point out that he drove around with no GPS. He had a map, and he went to like the dead center of the city and was like, "Hey guys, can you point me to the nearest arcade?" And you're saying he did that across like the country?
Yep.
I want to read this guy's biography. It's probably
Right?
very
He is a fascinating individual. And I love how he would just go up to foreign embassies as well and be like, "You guys want to throw down on some?
you.
Yeah, you guys want to throw down on some Pac-Man? Let's go."
Yeah, what's up, Russia? You want to play some Tetris?
That was the very early days, like the Wild West of just like who's the best of the best, to challenging whoever you can to claim your place and your title.
Yeah, that's awesome. So my two questions. One, so when you're talking about Cloud9, like how big is that team? Like how many people make up a team is kind of what I'm trying to understand.
Oh, that's where it varies too, because you have your structured leagues, which can sometimes support a specific game or sometimes support multiple games. And then you have teams which do the same thing. Sometimes you have a team which is specific to a game. Other times you have teams where they welcome on players and have sub teams that only play specific games.
So it's like a business where everybody has their own roles and stuff like that.
Exactly.
So, okay.
Most of these big name teams actually have their own facilities where they house their players. They have the training hours. They go through rigorous training, 8 hours of training like almost every day. They have their own personal chefs. They have an on-staff data scientist half the time. It's pretty ridiculous. Yeah,
I've read reports about people getting arthritis at like 15 or 24 because they're practicing so much. But yeah, but if you wouldn't mind going back to the viewership and prize pool money, like I think it's really odd to me that the peak viewership or average, I guess it goes by, like it's not proportional at all to the prize money.
I think it has to do with a lot of other factors too, right? Like maybe company sponsoring and random, like I'm sure because the NBA is involved in 2K, like I'm sure they throw some money in for
is
that,
this
right?
only Twitch viewership as well? Because maybe you can be watching from YouTube Live or I don't know, anything like that.
I'm honestly not 100%. I know the majority of statistics are pulled from Twitch, but with this, I'm not 100% if it was only Twitch or if they pulled this from other sources as well. I think it was just kind of dependent upon like where the tournaments were streamed, basically. I think because most of these were streamed via Twitch, but I know a lot of these host them on YouTube as well.
And a lot of these are actually hosted in real life where both teams come together like in an arena kind of. So they sell tickets and
the actual like final stages of the tournament are held at a physical location. Basically like the preliminaries, things like that, people compete to gain entry into it. Which I think that was like with the Fortnite with over 40 million people competing. That was all separate locations, and then basically the final few kind of all go into one location to compete. Yeah, it's a very fascinating industry.
Yeah, what was it? One of your other slides was showing the 2023 growth to 1.6 billion. I mean, that's like a 20% compound annual growth rate. That's sick.
Yeah, it's booming.
Dude, this Ninja guy, I just looked up his net worth. He's worth $17 million. Like this kid is like, there's so much money in this industry. It's bananas.
He was horrible on The Masked Singer, though.
He was. I mean, he seems like a nice guy, but he was terrible on there.
Funny. Yeah, he was so bad. He is a nice guy, I guess.
He brought the energy. I'll give him that.
Also, has anything come out about the fact that he doesn't play with females because he's worried about his girlfriend or his wife now, probably? He like refused. He like literally refused to play with girls because he felt like if he was spending too much time with other women, his girlfriend or fiance at the time would be upset about it. And it's like,
jeez,
wow,
you just can't, like, you're on a digital platform too. Like, I'm sorry. Like,
hey Ninja, when you're watching this video, we mean no offense to you.
No, we just want an update. We want an update on what you're doing as a feminist. Okay, what are you doing for female rights now?
Man.
Oh, dude, we got less than a minute here on the call. Well, appreciate it, Payson. I'll be posting this on YouTube and stuff too. So
for sure.
Thank you for the presentation today.
Yeah, man. Thanks.
I'm glad I didn't put more into it because I didn't realize how close to the time limit I got.
That was perfect. That was perfect. Good intro. So appreciate it.
Bye, guys.
All right, guys. Bye.